Hi, I'm Taylor Wickmanowski, and this is Environmental Ethics and Worldview, the second lesson, or the second direct instruction lesson in the Introduction to Environmental Science lesson. Basically, we have an introduction section with a homework assignment where they start the day before with the homework assignment. And then the day of the actual lesson, there's a PowerPoint presentation with a student note sheet. Right now, what I'm going to look at is the discussion guide. And for that, really just looking at the textbook assignment and each question, kind of what am I hoping the students to get from these questions. This question here, the question of a hydroelectric dam, I think is a good way to highlight the difference between anthropocentrism, biocentrism, and ecocentrism. For example, students have offered that for the people with an anthropocentric worldview, we're just going to look at that in terms of how is that going to affect the humans. Is it good for humans? If so, let's build it. Biocentric individuals, on the other hand, are going to broaden that scope a bit to look at animals and which animals are affected by this. Ecocentric individuals, on the other hand, even if it passes muster for anthropocentric and biocentric, ecocentric individuals may be more concerned with how it affects the entire environment. So one area of distinction that we wanted to make sure that came through in this discussion for my students was between biocentrism and ecocentrism. A lot of times biocentrism really revolves around what we call the charismatic megafauna, or the large animals such as bears and tigers and eagles that people really tend to care about, and someone who is ecocentric may be more concerned with less charismatic species like worms and parasites, for example. Anyway, I think this is a good question to generate discussion about those different worldviews. For this question, how to define worldview and how can their worldview affect the environment, I think this simply is for students to understand that worldview is not just a passive thing, it also guides action, and the way that you see the world is going to influence the decisions you make, whether that's as a consumer or a citizen in a democracy. Also, if you see the issue is important, you're more likely to take action. So worldview isn't just a passive thing, it guides action. This question about environmental justice. Environmental justice issues, I like to I'm in the urban core in Los Angeles, and I like to ground it there. But this is certainly work in any area that you're living in. But it's kind of dependent on the student's own experience. If they don't happen to live in an area where these types of issues are as obvious as they might be in the inner city, then perhaps you need to talk to them about where they've driven, maybe other places they visit. But specific examples always help. For example, my students brought up not just the litter and the trash in their neighborhood, but how the park in their neighborhood look compared to parks in other neighborhoods. For example, Beverly Hills is 5 miles down the road from my school, and it's a world away in terms of the quality of the parks and what the streets look like. They also talked about industrial areas on the east side of the city. The east side is historically economically disadvantaged, Latino and other minorities there. So that's a big opportunity for them to see those sorts of issues. Just where's the industrial side of town? Where are the pollutants compared to the west side of LA, where it's predominantly wealthy and white? What do you see over there? You don't see much in the way of industry. Finally, there's a reading here just talking about the gap in worldview and who thinks the environment's an important issue, and having the kids distinguish between Democrat and Republican, which it mentions here, young and old, and female versus male. And really the idea here is to have them discussing what are their preconceived notions of these groups, what do they know about Democrats compared to Republicans, and how do they think that would explain differences in worldview. What do they think about young and old people and how they may see the environment, and male and females. Really this one's probably more open-ended than any of the other questions, and like any of these really, the idea is just to get a good discussion going where we can revisit some of the issues presented in the reading and in the lecture, so that the students find multiple entryways, multiple points of connection for the content.